On the night of July 11th, 2015, one of the world's most dangerous criminals disappeared from what many people believed was one of Mexico's most secure prisons. The man was Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the powerful leader of the Sinaloa cartel. He was supposed to be locked inside Altiplano Federal Prison, a maximum security prison built to hold the country's most dangerous criminals. The prison had thick concrete walls, steel doors, armed guards, security cameras, motion sensors, and strict rules. Officials believed escape was almost impossible. But then something unbelievable happened. Security cameras showed El Chapo walking calmly into the small shower area inside his prison cell. A few moments later, he disappeared from view. Guards expected him to come back into the camera's sight within seconds. He never did. When officers rushed into the cell, they found it empty. There were no broken bars, no damaged doors, no signs of a fight. Instead, they found a carefully cut opening in the floor of the shower. Beneath it was something no one expected, a hidden tunnel stretching for nearly 1 mile beneath the prison. The tunnel was not just a simple hole in the ground. It was a highly organized underground passage with electric lights, ventilation systems, and even a motorcycle mounted on rails that helped transport people and construction materials through the narrow space. The discovery stunned Mexico. It shocked the United States. And it embarrassed governments around the world. How could one prisoner build such an advanced escape route without anyone noticing? Who paid for it? How long had the tunnel been under construction? And how did the prison's security systems fail to detect it? These questions quickly became the center of one of the biggest criminal investigations in modern history. But to understand how this incredible escape happened, we first need to understand the man behind it. Joaquin Guzman was not an ordinary criminal. For years, he led one of the largest drug trafficking organizations in the world. Authorities in both Mexico and the United States accused the Sinaloa cartel of moving huge amounts of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana across international borders. The cartel earned billions of dollars, giving it enormous power and influence. Law enforcement agencies spent years trying to capture him. When Mexican authorities finally arrested El Chapo in February 2014, many believed his criminal career was finally over. He was placed inside Altiplano prison because officials considered it one of the safest facilities in Latin America. The prison had been specially designed to prevent escapes. Cells were constantly monitored by cameras. Prisoners were searched regularly. Communication with the outside world was tightly controlled. Even visitors were watched closely. Officials believed they had learned from history. Years earlier, El Chapo had escaped from another Mexican prison in 2001, reportedly hidden inside a laundry cart. That escape became legendary and embarrassed the government for years. This time they promised things would be different. There would be no second escape. Yet behind the prison walls, someone was already working on a plan that would take months to complete. Far below the guards' feet, deep underground where cameras could not see and prison walls could not protect, an engineering project unlike anything investigators had seen was quietly taking shape. Every shovel of dirt, every piece of equipment, and every inch of the tunnel brought El Chapo one step closer to freedom. The world simply had no idea what was happening beneath one of its most secure prisons. And when investigators finally uncovered the truth, they realized this was far more than a prison break. It was one of the most carefully planned and expensive escape operations in criminal history. When investigators began searching the area beneath Altiplano prison, they quickly realized this was no ordinary escape tunnel. It was not a rough hole dug in a few nights. It was not a simple underground passage made with basic tools. Instead, it looked more like a professionally built construction project. The tunnel stretched for approximately 1.5 kilometers, or nearly 1 mile, from a house under construction outside the prison to the shower area inside El Chapo's cell. According to Mexican authorities, it was about 10 meters, 33 feet, below the ground. At that depth, normal activity on the surface would make it much harder for prison staff to hear or detect digging. As investigators walked through the tunnel, they found electric lighting installed from one end to the other. They found ventilation pipes that supplied fresh air. They discovered drainage systems designed to prevent flooding. Wooden supports helped keep parts of the tunnel stable. The floor was smooth enough for equipment to move through it. Most surprising of all was a small motorcycle mounted on rails. The motorcycle was attached to a rail cart, allowing workers to carry heavy loads of dirt, construction materials, and equipment through the narrow passage much faster than by hand. Investigators believed this system saved countless hours during construction. Everything about the tunnel suggested careful planning. Experts who examined it believed the builders had studied the prison's layout in great detail before digging began. The tunnel ended almost directly beneath the shower area inside El Chapo's cell. That location was especially important. Unlike the main part of the cell, the shower provided one of the few places where security cameras could not fully see a prisoner. The cameras were intentionally positioned to protect a limited amount of privacy while inmates showered. Prison officers could monitor movement into the area, but they could not watch every second inside it. The builders appeared to know this. They also appeared to know the exact position of El Chapo's cell. For investigators, this raised a troubling question. How could people outside the prison know such precise information? Authorities considered several possibilities during their investigation. Some experts suggested the builders may have gathered information from public construction records, previous knowledge of the prison's design, or other sources. Others believed corruption inside the prison system may have helped provide critical information. Mexican officials investigated numerous prison employees after the escape. Several officials were questioned. Many prison workers were detained during the investigation. Some were later charged with crimes related to the escape, while others were investigated for possible negligence. The investigation focused on whether employees had ignored warning signs or knowingly helped the operation. Building a tunnel of this size required far more than labor. It required money. A great deal of money. Construction crews would have needed excavation equipment, electrical supplies, ventilation materials, fuel, generators, rail systems, building materials, and a secure property where the digging could take place without attracting attention. Authorities believed the house at the end of the tunnel had been carefully chosen for this purpose. From the outside, it looked like an unfinished building. Construction activity around a new house would not seem unusual. Trucks could arrive carrying materials. Workers could come and go. Noise from tools could be explained by normal construction. Meanwhile, deep underground, another project was moving steadily toward the prison. Investigators also faced another challenge. Every tunnel creates enormous amounts of dirt. Removing that dirt without attracting attention is often one of the hardest parts of any underground excavation. Officials examined how the builders may have handled this problem, believing the soil was likely removed gradually during what appeared to be normal construction work at the property. By spreading the work over many months, large piles of dirt may never have become obvious to neighbors. The operation showed remarkable patience. It was not rushed. It was carefully organized. Each stage depended on the one before it. One mistake could have exposed the entire plan. Yet month after month, the tunnel moved closer to its target. Investigators later concluded that the builders had reached almost exactly the right location beneath the prison. Only a small opening remained. Then, on the evening of July 11, 2015, El Chapo walked into the shower area of a cell. He climbed down a ladder through the opening in the floor. Within moments, he was standing inside the tunnel that had taken months to build. The prison above remained quiet. Most guards had no idea that the inmate they were assigned to watch had already vanished beneath their feet. By the time alarms were raised, El Chapo was speeding through the underground passage on the rail-mounted motorcycle toward freedom. For one of the most wanted men in the world, the escape had worked almost exactly as planned. As soon as prison officials confirmed that Joaquin El Chapo Guzman had escaped, the situation became a national emergency. The alarm spread quickly across Mexico. Police officers, soldiers, and federal investigators were called into action. Roads near Altiplano prison were blocked. Checkpoints appeared on major highways. Helicopters searched from the air. Authorities hoped they could catch El Chapo before he got too far, but they were already too late. By the time guards discovered the tunnel and understood what had happened, El Chapo had likely left the area. The escape made headlines around the world within hours. News channels interrupted regular programming. Newspapers called it one of the greatest prison escapes in modern history. People everywhere asked the same question. How could this happen again? This was especially shocking because El Chapo had escaped from prison once before. After his first escape in 2001, Mexican officials had promised that if he were ever captured again, he would never be allowed to walk free. Now, only about 17 months after his 2014 arrest, he was gone once more. The escape damaged public trust in Mexico's prison system. Many citizens were angry. They believed someone inside the prison must have helped. The Mexican government immediately launched a large investigation. Dozens of prison employees were questioned. Officials examined security camera footage, phone records, prison logs, and financial information. They wanted to know whether prison staff had ignored warning signs or accepted bribes. The investigation led to the arrest of several prison officials and employees. Authorities accused some of failing to carry out their duties properly, while others faced allegations connected to helping the escape. The legal cases varied from person to person, and investigators continued examining whether corruption had played a role. Meanwhile, the search for El Chapo expanded far beyond the prison. Mexico's military joined the hunt. The country's navy, federal police, intelligence agencies, and state authorities worked together to gather information. The United States also became deeply involved. Because El Chapo was wanted on major drug trafficking charges in the United States, American agencies closely supported the investigation. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the U.S. Marshals Service shared intelligence with Mexican authorities as both countries searched for one of the world's most wanted fugitives. Investigators believed El Chapo would try to return to territory controlled by the Sinaloa cartel. The cartel had spent years building a powerful network across parts of Mexico. That network included safe houses, trusted associates, transportation routes, and people willing to hide its leader. This made the search extremely difficult. Unlike an ordinary fugitive, El Chapo was not alone. Authorities believed he had access to loyal supporters, money, vehicles, communication systems, and places to hide. Every hour that passed increased his chances of disappearing again. Investigators also searched properties connected to cartel members. They monitored roads, airports, and border crossings. Intelligence officers tracked possible communications between cartel associates. But finding one man in a country as large as Mexico was like searching for a single needle in a giant haystack. As the weeks passed, pressure on the Mexican government continued to grow. Leaders from around the world questioned how such a sophisticated escape had happened. Some experts argued that corruption had made the escape possible. Others pointed to the cartel's enormous financial resources. The Sinaloa cartel had earned billions of dollars through drug trafficking over many years. That wealth allowed it to buy equipment, pay workers, and support complex operations that ordinary criminal groups could never afford. Still, investigators knew that money alone could not guarantee success. Someone had planned every step. Someone had studied the prison. Someone had coordinated workers, supplies, and timing with remarkable precision. Finding El Chapo now meant finding the people who helped him. Then, months after the escape, investigators began receiving new intelligence. Small pieces of information started to fit together. Surveillance teams noticed unusual movements in areas linked to the cartel. Electronic intelligence produced fresh leads. Authorities believed they were getting closer. They didn't know it yet, but one unexpected mistake would soon expose El Chapo's location. And the operation to capture him again was about to begin. For nearly 6 months after escaping through the secret tunnel, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman managed to stay out of the hands of authorities. Despite thousands of officers searching across Mexico, he remained hidden. But no one can stay invisible forever. Little by little, investigators gathered new pieces of information. Mexican intelligence agencies worked alongside the military and federal police. They tracked communications, followed leads from informants, and watched people believed to have connections with the Sinaloa cartel. Officials focused on one simple idea. Even if they could not find El Chapo directly, they might find the people helping him. That strategy slowly began to work. According to Mexican authorities, several trusted associates were identified and placed under surveillance. Their movements helped investigators narrow down possible hiding places. One location soon caught their attention. It was a house in the city of Los Mochis, in the Mexican state of Sinaloa. Authorities believed El Chapo might be inside. The information was considered strong enough to act. Before sunrise on January 8, 2016, members of the Mexican Navy launched a carefully planned operation. Highly trained Marines surrounded the house. Their goal was clear: capture El Chapo alive if possible. But they knew the mission would be dangerous. El Chapo's security team was heavily armed. As the Marines moved toward the building, gunfire suddenly erupted. A fierce firefight broke out. According to official reports, cartel gunmen opened fire on the approaching forces. The Marines returned fire while trying to secure the area. The battle lasted several minutes. When it ended, 5 suspected gunmen had been killed. 6 others were arrested. 1 Marine was injured during the operation. Inside the house, however, El Chapo was gone. Once again, it appeared he had escaped. But this time, he had not disappeared through a carefully built tunnel stretching for miles. Instead, investigators later said he fled through a much smaller escape route hidden inside the building. The passage connected to the city's drainage system. Using the narrow tunnels beneath the streets, El Chapo and one of his associates managed to get away from the house before the Marines completed their search. For a brief moment, it seemed history might repeat itself. But the escape was only temporary. After leaving the drainage system, El Chapo reportedly stole a vehicle and continued traveling away from Los Mochis. Authorities quickly expanded the search. Roadblocks were established. Police units spread across nearby highways. Military forces searched surrounding areas. The pressure was closing in. Not long afterward, officers stopped a vehicle carrying El Chapo and one of his associates. Without another major shootout, authorities arrested him. This time, the world's most famous fugitive was back in custody. Images of the captured cartel leader quickly spread across television screens and newspapers around the world. For the Mexican government, the arrest was a major victory. President Enrique Peña Nieto announced that El Chapo had been captured once again. The news made international headlines. Many people wondered whether this arrest would finally end the cycle of escapes. But another surprising detail soon emerged. Before his capture, El Chapo had reportedly been communicating with people connected to a planned film project about his life. Those communications became one of several investigative leads that helped authorities better understand his movements during the months he was on the run. While this attracted enormous media attention, officials have stated that the capture resulted from a broad intelligence operation involving surveillance, investigative work, and coordinated law enforcement efforts, not from any single factor alone. After the arrest, Mexican authorities reached an important decision. Keeping El Chapo inside another Mexican prison carried enormous risks. He had already escaped twice from prisons in Mexico. Many believed there could never be a third chance. The United States had long requested his extradition to face multiple federal criminal charges. Now, that request became even more urgent. Officials on both sides of the border began preparing for one of the most significant extraditions in modern criminal history. The man who had once slipped through a mile-long tunnel would soon be placed inside one of the most secure prison systems in the world. And this time, authorities intended to make sure there would be no escape. The capture of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman in January 2016 brought an end to one of the most dramatic prison escapes in modern history. But for governments in both Mexico and the United States, the story was far from over. The biggest question now was simple. How could they make sure El Chapo never escaped again? Mexican officials knew they could not take another risk. El Chapo had already escaped from prison twice, first in 2001 and then through the secret tunnel in 2015. Each escape had damaged public confidence and raised serious concerns about corruption, prison security, and the power of organized crime. The United States had already charged El Chapo with multiple crimes, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and leading a criminal enterprise responsible for moving massive amounts of illegal drugs into the United States. After years of legal proceedings, Mexico approved his extradition. On January 19, 2017, El Chapo was extradited to the United States. He was placed under extremely tight security from the moment he arrived. Unlike his previous prison stays, his movements, communications, and daily activities were closely monitored. His federal trial began in New York City in late 2018. The trial lasted for months and became one of the most closely watched criminal cases in the world. Prosecutors presented testimony from former cartel members, law enforcement officers, and other witnesses. They also introduced documents, financial records, intercepted communications, and other evidence that they argued showed El Chapo had led the Sinaloa cartel for many years. The defense challenged parts of the government's case, as is standard in a criminal trial. After hearing weeks of testimony and reviewing the evidence, the jury reached its decision. In February 2019, El Chapo was found guilty on multiple federal charges. A few months later, he was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. He was also ordered to forfeit billions of dollars in criminal proceeds. Today, El Chapo is imprisoned at ADX Florence, the United States' highest security federal prison. The facility is designed to hold inmates considered the greatest security risks. Prisoners spend most of their time alone in their cells under strict controls, making escape extraordinarily difficult. For many people, his transfer marked the final chapter of a decades-long manhunt. But the tunnel escape left a lasting impact. Security experts around the world studied what had happened beneath Altiplano prison. They examined how a tunnel nearly a mile long could be built without being detected. Many countries reviewed their own prison systems, looking for weaknesses that criminals might exploit. The escape also highlighted another difficult issue: corruption. While investigations led to charges against some prison officials, the broader lesson was that even the strongest walls and the most advanced technology can be undermined if people inside the system fail to do their jobs honestly or become involved with criminal organizations. The tunnel itself became a symbol. It showed that planning, money, engineering, and patience could overcome security measures that many believed were impossible to defeat. It was not simply an escape. It was a reminder that organized crime can invest enormous resources into protecting its leaders. For law enforcement agencies, the case reinforced the importance of intelligence gathering, cooperation between countries, and constant improvements to prison security. For the public, it became one of the most unforgettable true crime stories of the 21st century. A man once considered untouchable escaped through a tunnel hidden beneath a maximum security prison. For 6 months, he disappeared. Then, through determined investigative work and international cooperation, authorities found him, arrested him, and brought him to trial. The tunnel that once represented freedom became part of history. Its story continues to be studied by